This is The Future of Money, a podcast where we hope to educate and get educated about the new world of blockchain and digital money. And my name is Eric Den Boer, and I will be your host. Hi, and welcome again to Blockchain and the Future of Money. Today, we're going to talk about blockchain and real estate. And with me, I have our lovely Lee and Craig from Gokey. So we are going to start asking him to present himself and talk a little bit about what he's doing and where he comes from.
Okay, now?
Yes.
Jump in.
All right. Well, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Lee, for having us. So my name's Craig Immel. Eric knows me from co-organizer of the Blockchain Northwest Arkansas meetup group. Mm-hmm. We've been going for about 5 or 6 months now. And, I really was excited to network with people in the area and just talk about blockchain and see who's doing what in the space, see what I could learn, see what kind of co-conspirators I can find to work on my project.
This area is growing like crazy when it comes to blockchain. I meet new people that are interested in blockchain every day. And out of the Blockchain Northwest Arkansas group that you and I started, we actually ended up starting this group that every Sunday we meet at this coffee place near the Fayetteville Mall. And of course, you guys are welcome anytime you want to. And people are just, we're meeting new people every day. And even a funny story that we were there having coffee and we were talking about this. And just one random person just walked up, oh, you guys talking blockchain? And just joined, So that's was really cool.
That's
cool.
So
you're absolutely right. The timing is perfect. And this is an area where blockchain and cryptocurrency and all of that stuff is just growing. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm taking up your time.
No problem. That's kind of how we all kind of hooked up. But I'm working on a project of my own on building on the Cardano blockchain. And basically it has to do with getting real estate and real estate rights tokenized and kind of digitized in a way that they can be recorded on the blockchains and exchanged and traded on blockchains. So it's just a really interesting.
Tell me how do you go take it from the beginning. Let's say that I want to buy. I'm looking at a house. How's the process going from looking at the house, talking to a realtor, and then eventually getting all that information on blockchain? And I think we at one point were talking about you're talking about the titles and stuff like that too coming on blockchain, right?
Right.
Am I right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely where the industry is going. So just to step back a little bit, if you think about, what we refer to as a chain of title of a piece of property, I mean, it's recorded in a centralized place. Presumably safely and securely for anyone to be able to come and inspect the records from the public. They're also time-stamped. So we create what's called a chain of title. So it's in a lot of ways, it's kind of like the original. It's almost like a blockchain in some ways.
Yeah, it fits that model.
Yeah. Except for the fact that it's all centralized in one location versus the data living in a lot of different computers. So basically, what we're doing is one of the core products we're working on. Well, kind of have this 3-pronged approach. So we're tokenizing properties and property rights using NFTs, but then we're also creating these peer-to-peer smart contract platform where 2 individuals maybe or maybe not using a realtor and a mortgage company can interact with each other securely.
Let's start with tokenization.
Okay.
Let's start in that end. How does that work?
So there are quite a few projects out there tokenizing real estate. And when a lot of people think of that, they think of taking the title, basically almost like putting a digital wrapper around it. And I know you guys learned about NFTs at one of these previous sessions. So an NFT being a non-fungible token is a really great kind of parallel to a paper title, because every property is unique. I mean, by definition, like no two parcels of land can be identical, and just like a one-of-one NFT. So it ends up being this really nice tool to use. So basically, the most simple approach is creating basically a version of a warranty deed on the chain. So you have the token, you might have a nice image, that kind of looks like a certificate, almost kind of like an old school deed would look. But the important piece is the metadata that's actually recorded on the blockchain. So it's going to record something like, a legal description is almost like the fingerprint of the property. I mean, that's what really makes it unique. So you have a legal description, a parcel number usually that is assigned by like a tax assessor or a clerk and recorder's office, maybe a township section and range, or something like that. So basically, you're representing this property via this token. And, instead of there being the certificate recorded at a treasurer's office, basically you demonstrate your ownership of this property by nature of having this NFT in the wallet that you and only you control.
One thing that I was thinking about, that because I have a friend that had property, and he got a new neighbor, and the neighbor came in and said, well, actually this parcel here belongs to me. And he's like, well, no, not really, because it's my family for so and so long. And then they had to go in and dispute the fact that, okay, this actually shows that this is mine and this is yours, but there's his parcel that was an older one, so therefore it showed that he had more land than the other one. These things in the future will go completely away then, because if it's on the blockchain and this is what it is, then that is the parcel you own, right?
Yeah, I think so. So, we talked about kind of the existing system of recording titles and registering land and whatever term you use for it, depending on where in the world you live. A lot of places are starting to think about putting that on a blockchain just to avoid disputes like that. Sometimes there are innocent disputes like that, but sometimes there are opportunities for fraud and things like that. So it's an imperfect system. It's better system than exists in some other places in the world where they have no legal registration of land, which is really interesting because there are people working in these countries. There's a project actually on Cardano called Landano, and they're in Ghana, Africa, which is a country with a completely underdeveloped land registry system. And similar to the way that, some societies kind of skipped landlines and went straight to mobile phones, they're basically going to skip over this, trying to build a land registration that looks like what
paper
we have.
way, and then go straight to blockchain.
We're going to go straight to registering on the blockchain.
That is fantastic.
There's this fundamental question, though, and this may not be the right place for us to have this conversation, but I'm glad to hear you say that, people or registries or treasury offices, they can use blockchain to store sort of their records or what they already have on. But if you are giving it straight to people, it does seem like it's inviting quite a mess, especially when it comes to land.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part now. It's like we're kind of trying to create this system that almost runs in parallel with the legacy system. So, it kind of boils down to like, if Eric and I agree that we're going to exchange some token for this NFT, and we both agree that to us this token represents the ownership of the property. It's not absolute proof that I own the property or that he's going to own it, but I think someone would look at it as evidence, and you could say, look, these two parties had a smart contract that's also recorded on the blockchain, that when Eric sends Craig X number of tokens for payment and I send him back this NFT, that, our intention was to have this contract and execute the contract. Yeah. So, at the end of the day, once that is all done, currently, yes, Eric and I still have to go down to Washington County Courthouse or wherever and sign off on the official paperwork. But someday, if Washington County is progressive and they put all their records on a blockchain, then the two systems operate
more in
together.
tandem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we talked about tokenizations.
Well, let me go a little bit deeper than that.
Okay, cool.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So that's probably like the most simplistic view of what we're looking at doing. But like when you think about property and property rights, you know, when you look at a warranty deed, like basically it represents what's called fee simple ownership of property. But within that, there's what we call a bundle of rights, which are like your right to possess a property, your right to sell it, your right to enjoy it. You know, there's 4 or 5 different kind of fundamental rights that go with that. And it kind of comes from old English medieval days where, you know, before literacy was a widespread thing and there was obviously no digital types of recordation of titles. You know, one way people would kind of symbolically transfer land was like gather up like a bundle of sticks and tie it with some kind of ribbon or something and hand it to the next person. So it just kind of over time, you know, legal frameworks evolve just like everything else. So, you know, you can almost think of like the first NFT I described like a warranty deed representation of a deed being like the string that ties the other bundles together. But, you know, when you think about all the different ways people use and finance real estate, there are opportunities to tokenize the individual rights within that and for certain periods of time. So if you think about like a lease agreement, so basically, you know, say Eric has a house, you know, he owns, you know, he has the warranty deed, right? But for some predetermined amount of time, I'm going to have the right to possess the property. So I'm going to have my own rights within that property. And he has these other rights, you know, and we have an agreement over who owns what rights and when. And then you can get even a little more.
It's kind of like a rent, you know, if I rent it out to you and we make an agreement.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. I mean, that's what we call a rental agreement.
All the contingencies that are when you are buying or selling real estate, that there's often a lot of contingencies within the contract because it depends on a sale or it depends on something else happening over here.
Yeah, so, I don't know how many times it's been like, well, I will buy your house if I can sell my house.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Typical thing.
Yeah, there are things like that. And, you know, a really exciting kind of evolution of this is the idea of options for real estate. So, you know, really we kind of landed on this idea because, you know, the project itself, Gokey, has a mission of helping anyone who wants to have access to property ownership because, you know, here today in Northwest Arkansas, it's more and more out of reach for
difficult.
A lot of people. And it's not just like the working poor who are having problems acquiring ownership. It's everyday people, middle-class people. And it's like the gap is getting bigger all the time. So, you know, in the past, I started thinking about ideas like lease options and things like that. You know, I won't give you the full history, but, you know, like that is a great way for someone who's a renter to kind of work their way into property ownership.
This would be awesome for first-time buyers.
Yeah, it's perfect because you can, as a renter, if you have an option to buy a property later, which in itself, that option is a property right. It's kind of a future right, and it's an asset, and it's an asset that can be tokenized and secured and maintain and hold value. But yeah, so if you have a lease with an option to buy a house, let's say I'm leasing your house and you give me an option to buy it for $200,000 in 2 years from now, and I'm like, okay, let's do it. So I have this option to buy it for $200,000, but let's say it's worth $210,000 or $220,000 after that 2 years. Then I kind of automatically have this like built-in kind of equity that, you know, normally as a renter, you totally walk away from the rental agreement with like absolutely nothing to show for it. So you know, that's really kind of what drove the idea is like, how do you, in this time and age, like why shouldn't we use technology to help renters build some equity because they add a lot of value to the transaction, and to their communities. If they're a good renter, they support local businesses.
Is it appealing for the owners of the property to do this?
It really can be. So that's one of the most fundamental questions is like, why would I do that as an owner? So a couple main reasons. Like sometimes, let's say you've been renting out this house for a long time and you're thinking about retiring and you're like, at some point I'm going to sell this property. So you're like, hey, you know what? Now I have this guy who's a tenant. He's renting from me. He's paying his rent regularly and he wants to buy the house. So, if I'm an owner, I'm thinking, okay, I already have a buyer for the house. He knows the house, warts and all. I don't have to necessarily go through the hassle of making any kind of needed repairs that it would take to put it on the market. Maybe even the tenant feels comfortable enough in his option position that he makes repairs to the property, which a renter normally wouldn't do.
Yeah, so if you have a rent to buy kind of deal, you can put in the contract saying that if you keep up with the house and pay for the repairs and all that kind of stuff, then this is the price that we're going to sell it for.
Yeah, kind of an as-is price. Yeah, and, you probably avoid like brokerage fees and things like that.
Yeah.
Inspections.
Which is, and that really adds up a lot. If it's 6 or 7%, that's significant.
And the thing is that if you are rent to buy and you sign a 5 or 10 year contract, just imagine all the money that you don't have to put in to keep the repairs up.
Yeah. It could be a lot, and and you might be able to avoid some of those like late night calls, like, hey, my sink is dripping. It's like, okay, well, you have an interest in this house too, so you need to kind of pitch in on the maintenance, which is not typically something you would ask of a renter. But what's interesting is like this is something people can already do, but it's sometimes these rent to own types of deals have gotten a little bit of a bad reputation because there have been some bad actors who come in and let's say you weren't a good upstanding guy and my 2 years is up. I say, hey, I want to buy, exercise my option now. And you're like, well, I know I said I'd sell it to you for $200,000, but it's worth $220, and I'm just going to basically pull the rug out from under you, and you can sue me, try to sue me if you want. And most renters are going to be like,
well, in Arkansas, there are almost no renters' rights.
Right.
We're the worst in the country for renters' rights. So you're automatically in a position where your hands are really kind of tied.
Yeah.
So that is like one of the great things I think for renters in this is that, again, it's that the record that cannot be changed is such a fundamental idea to the power of blockchain, I think, is that you're protected in that way.
Smart contract, right? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
No, we're there. We got it.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I mean, like fundamentally, what you're doing is taking out this element of trust. Like if I'm a renter and and I don't know you at all, I'm like really putting a lot of trust in you, like that you are not going to screw me over at the end of the day. Yeah. And the whole fundamental essence of blockchain is like you create these trustless, permissionless systems that are immutable and code is law, to use that quote. So that's kind of the fundamental idea, at least on the kind of the peer-to-peer part of what we're doing.
Yes. Okay. So peer-to-peer is awesome. Now, I wonder if, because often in buying and selling real estate, you're dealing with banks and with title companies, and you're having to borrow money. So when we get there, when we start interfacing with banks, how does this work? Does it work?
I mean, I think it could. We're not quite there yet, and we haven't even really started to think about that a whole lot, because when you do start to introduce mortgage lenders and real estate agents into the transaction, those are professions that are fairly highly regulated, and there's a lot of, it just makes things much more complicated. So you need a lot more kind of permission, so to speak. Whereas two parties who just want to do something with their own property and money, like there's really no one overseeing what they can or cannot do. It's like those are kind of fundamental property
Yeah,
rights.
and in the future, who knows? I might buy a house in Bitcoin, right?
Possibly. I mean, it's been done, but, we would like to create a system. So, I can definitely see like real estate brokers being involved. So like, let's say you have someone who wants to buy and let's say you're a real estate agent with a buyer.
Okay.
But maybe the buyer has kind of a non-traditional income situation or wants a certain type of property that it's just doesn't fit the typical mold. I mean, there's a system in place that, takes, properties and buyers and scores their credit and really adds a lot of standardization so that typically all these, at least in residential, these single family loans can be bundled and packaged and sold on Wall Street as securities.
Yeah.
So for that to really work all the way down the line, there needs to be lots of check boxes and everything so that it provides some transparency as to the quality of the mortgages and the soundness of the borrowers.
Yeah.
Because that's what caused the last housing crisis, which was the genesis of the birth of Bitcoin in the first place, right?
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
it really all
absolutely.
comes back to real estate at the end of the
really
day.
does.
That's so true. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Irony.
I know.
Right?
And in my mind, I'm like, at least it has a record, right? So even if you're going through all these processes so it can be bundled and be sold as a security, at least the next time that something happens, we can go back and see the actual record of what was the problem, kind of like we've analyzed the 2008.
Yeah.
One thing that I was thinking about is that if you have a renter, let's say that I own the house and he wants to rent to buy, and then we agree on the price that after 10 years or whatever, then he can buy it for $200,000. Well, the nice thing for him is that he knows that the price is going to be $200,000. So we can have an agreement saying that I'm going to stay at this price, and let's say that the monthly rent is going to be $1,000, but you pay me $1,100. That goes into this escrow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
If you break the contract and don't want to buy it, or you leave for some reason or whatever, that money goes back to me.
Yeah.
But if you then buy the house from me, that money that sits in this kind of escrow, goes back into the buying. And not only that, that also includes interest, or if you do it in crypto, the crypto value might go up, and then suddenly you can buy the house for $200,000 of what the crypto value is for the day then, right?
Yeah.
Like Bitcoin, for
Yeah,
instance.
for sure.
So those are options that you can do in these smart contracts too, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you can create this, this options concept is really interesting because, like if you say, you have this option, and it's done with other kinds of financial products all over Wall Street, right? So it's just something that's never really been utilized in real estate very much, especially like single family home real estate. But, thinking forward, like let's say I have this option to buy the house, and by the time that 2 years rolls around, like let's say I got married and we had a kid on the way, and then that ended up being twins, and all of a sudden the house is too small, so I have to move, right? And it's like, okay, I had an option to buy this house. That's cool, but it would be even better if I had a right to sell this option to someone else because, I already own the asset being the option.
Yes.
And so I could sell this option to someone else. So let's say if this option strike price is $200,000 and the property is worth $220,000, then the option is worth at least $20,000, right? So I could sell it for like $18,000 and like use that to apply to the purchase of the home that does actually work for me.
It really puts a lot of power or ownership in the renters and for future use, because this is all stuff that just goes away today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and now we're setting something in, it's on the blockchain. It can't be changed.
Yeah.
And it gives them so many more options to start building something or building a future.
Yeah.
Like I said, first-time buyers, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it could be huge. So like, let's say you have a first-time buyer, like that's kind of non-traditional. And then we would love to be able to reach out to the real estate agent community and say, hey, look, if you're having trouble getting your buyer financed through traditional means, come check out Gokey. Maybe we could help do something, and we see a future further down the road where we have like pools of lenders who are staking their tokens and
right.
creating passive income and creating this liquidity pool that could be offered to potential buyers. So, I mean, it's hard to stay focused on just trying to roll out like one or two kind of fundamental products because it's so exciting to talk about all the potential possibilities in this space.
And there's implications everywhere.
We're just talking about real estate, but this could be boats, this could be cars, this could be all kinds of physical objects in the real world.
Yeah, and it really does put the option of some ownership or power or being able to get some of your money back into the renter or the seller of, if we're talking about a car or a boat or something like that. Like, you're right. Right now, if you had an option that you were agreed upon and that you had to break, you just eat it. There's no other recourse.
No other way,
Right.
And so it's yet another way to sort of empowerment of people if we were able to go through this. But it sounds like also it's a complicated process for someone, even if they're sort of new to blockchain or crypto.
Well,
is that fair or not fair?
I think it's fair.
Okay.
I think of this as like having a front end and a back end, right? So I feel like Gokey's job is to make the interface simple, right? So, it's not like the two parties are going to have to sit down and write their own smart contract in their favorite programming language, right? We're going to create like a simple user interface where
it's going to be a platform for them to just go on like a website or something. You fill all the information in that you want to have, and that automatically creates the smart contract.
Yeah.
One thing that I was thinking about first-time buyers, you can actually even put it in there and say that kids that are coming out in life that has really good grades and they have been really, part of the community and doing whatever, they will get some point system that actually for them, it paves the way a little bit easier to get. That's just a thought.
We've thought about that. So many ways to incentivize good behavior in these things and to disincentivize the bad actors that are out there.
Yeah.
Just to, provide a level of protection for buyers and sellers, so.
But going back to Gokey, so Gokey's, what you guys are trying to do is simplify this for the people that are interested in doing this. For instance, on the website, you can go in, fill in information that you want to do in the contract, and this creates a smart contract. What more would
So, the buyer and seller have to kind of decide the structure of the deal. And this is something we're kind of still working on, like what's the exact process? Because, at the end of the day, you do have to create these tokens representing these different rights within this deal, right? So, but to do that, you have to know what the intentions of the buyer and seller are and what they're kind of mutually agreeing to. So, at some point, maybe we have a forum that has buyer and seller kind of memorializing what it is they want to do, and our software says, okay, we're going to need these tokens to be minted. And, that's a relatively easy process, and that can be managed by smart contracts primarily. Right now, if someone wanted to do that, we would have to kind of manually
be a lot of coding.
Do this. Yeah. Well, like there's starting to be a lot of kind of low code and no code tools out there for minting NFTs and things too. Yeah. So every day it's getting easier. So right now, over the last 5-10 years, people have been building like kind of this back end infrastructure, all the technical stuff to make it all work. Now people are saying, okay, well, here's something that could be an application that could be built on top of this, and here's how we could build that plus a user-friendly interface and creating a non-intimidating user experience.
Yeah, which is so key, I think.
That reminds me of the early days of when you were building a website compared to how you build a website today, because you can go in there and say, hey, I just bought a domain name. Here, I can go to a website, drag and drop everything and make my own website super simple. But in the old days, you have to sit there and code everything.
Oh, yeah.
And in the blockchain sphere, and you're absolutely right, because I've seen that more and more happening now, is that you can go to a site where everything you do will be drag and dropped, and it just boom is on the smart contracts, for instance, on the blockchain.
Yeah.
So the only difference is that instead of going on the World Wide Web, it now actually firmly rooted in the blockchain. So that's something we need
and that's
to get
happening
someone
right
into.
now. I don't know if you guys are familiar with WordPress, the CMS
Yes.
platform, right? Who isn't, right?
Yeah.
So I remember like kind of working on my first websites. They were really hard to build. You kind of had to, at least for me, I had to kind of hack my way through HTML and CSS a little bit just to get something very rudimentary up and online. So, I think it's 2012, I really discovered the WordPress platform and, immediately hooked because, flash forward 10 years, they do have these really nice drag and drop interfaces. So, that's a Web 2 type platform, but we're working with a guy now based in Australia who is creating a WordPress plugin called Cardano Press. So basically it's a plugin that just goes right into your Web 2 WordPress platform, and your users can hop on your website, and instead of having like a login, that shares their identity and potentially puts their privacy at risk, they connect their wallet, and the plugin can look at what's in their wallet, and if you hold this NFT or whatever parameters we want to create, like if you've been staking to this stake pool for X number of months, or you have this number of tokens, like you can have access to this page, or it's really fascinating what people are already doing. So it's happening really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, we can go on forever
I feel
talking
like
about this.
This
is
put our
so
toe
interesting.
in.
I know we're running out of time, so maybe we should just invite him one more time and just continue talking a little bit more in depth, because it feels like we haven't talked about the DAO system that you can do in there, and the whole using of NFTs and all that kind of stuff in this real estate sphere of blockchain, or blockchain space of real estate.
Yeah.
Anyway, but before we go, tell me, where can we find you? Where do I go to find Gokey?
Yeah, well, the easiest place is our website. It's at gokey.network, so GOKEY.network. All of our socials are on there. We're on Discord. Discord and Twitter are probably our two primary accounts that we take the most care of. But, it's all there. Our light paper is there, which kind of gives a high-level overview of all the things we're working on and why we're doing it, why we think it's important, and all of that. So I'd invite everyone to check it out.
Gokey.network, right?
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. And again, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll hope to see you next time. And don't forget, come and visit us at Blockchain NWA at Meetup anytime. I'll see you guys later.
Right.
Bye.